and we're pleased to welcome you. I want to acknowledge that this whole week, this event is being held on the territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And I ask you to welcome, please, Debra Sparrow, a member of the Musqueam Nation, to extend a welcome to us. Debra.
Thank you for that. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here to our beautiful territory. And what a beautiful day it is. On behalf of my Chief Wayne Sparrow, on behalf of my council members, my community members, my surrounding relatives that surround this beautiful city you call Vancouver, and on behalf of Captain Vancouver, who it's named after. Captain Vancouver was actually a very good friend of ours. You know, when the first ships arrived in Vancouver in 1791, my great-great-grandfather welcomed Captain Vancouver, and he was actually very, very amazing in the relationship that he had here in the first 3 years that Captain Vancouver came from England. So we've been welcoming everyone to our land here for the last 200 and 300 years. And what a change we've gone through. We're still welcoming you, but now we're residing to a very, very small little space, when we talk of spaces, in the corner by UBC. We have much work to do, as you do. And that's the thing that amazed me when I think about you and your jobs, and I think about the spaces in the city of Vancouver and all cities throughout the world, how we have changed. And you know, we've changed with you because we've assimilated. We've become educated in your standards. And when I say you, I mean European standards, English colonial standards. And so we have to change to a place where now we are in such a state in the world that for every 100 steps we've taken forward, we now know that we need to take a few back. We need to reevaluate who we are as human beings together in this world and look at what we're doing very seriously, as you are. So we're looking for balance. We're looking for ourselves again. We got on such a fast pace towards somewhere in the future that we forgot about our past. And it's said that a society that forgets about its ancestors soon forgets about its descendants. And we don't want that to be us, because that's a disaster. Our people, our old people, always sat with us and told us how important our past was and that we never forget it. Never forget who you are, my grandfather said at 100 years old before he left this world. He said, know who you are and know where you come from. Our roots are planted firmly in the very soil that our ancestors are buried. We know who we are. We know where we come from. And that's the value that he left with me. And that, to me, is all worth what we are doing today in reevaluating who we are as human beings in this world. And we all need each other now. If I had stood here 20 years ago, I might have been an angry lady. But I have learned much in these last 20 years of the work that I do as a traditional weaver. I'm wearing a little bit of the work I do because there's beauty and integrity in how we create spaces and how we create our environment. And that's what you're looking for. I'm always amazed when I go out for a walk and I'm walking down the paved road and I look at a crack in the pavement and up through there comes a beautiful plant. It doesn't matter how we try to destroy the world or pave it over, the earth and the mother always finds a way to come through and shine for us. These are the things we must remember when we are creating spaces, that it doesn't always have to be the way that it was, that we look for ways that are not just new but old. In balancing, I ask you to remember who you are. You know, when I was coming down here, someone asked me if I was going to wear my traditional robe. I said, only if you wear your traditional one. So maybe at one of our gatherings, we can all show up in our traditional wear and look for the balance there, because not all of us are traditional, not all of us say a prayer, but all of us believe. We believe in humanity. We believe in who we are. And so I leave that with you this morning as you continue your journey in what you do today. And I welcome you here. If you flew across the water, if you drove, I welcome you here, and I advise you to go to what's called a park today, Stanley Park. So beautiful. One of the most beautiful parks in the world, if not the most beautiful park, I think, last year. My grandmother's great-grandmother's home. It wasn't a park. It was her home. And she was escorted out of there in the early 1900s by a musket. And they said if she didn't leave immediately, well, she had to leave immediately. And as she gathered her little belongings with her husband, hardly speaking English, and she got from here to the doorway, they burnt her house down in front of her. That's our park today. Those are the things that we as First Nations are working towards in reclaiming part of who we are. But it's still a beautiful park today, and thank God we made it that park, because now we can go there and we can see what is left of our beautiful forest in Vancouver. So with that in mind, again, I'd like to hold my hands up to each and every one of you, and when I do that, it's to honor the work you do, to honor the place you come from, your placemaking, and to remember your ancestors. Haich Kasiyam. Thank you. Have a good morning.
Remember who you are and where you come from. A place. It's a place. Debra, thank you so much. Thank you. I want to welcome our online audience. The reason we're being pretty draconian about start times, those of you that weren't here at 8 o'clock, is because we're live, broadcasting around the world. So hello to our live stream audience. Sorry you're not here in Vancouver. We hate to tell you how beautiful the weather is. It's really beautiful weather. But we're delighted to have you online, and we hope that you'll tweet both online and here with the hashtag Placemaking Week. This is the first Placemaking Week. It's an experiment. How are you doing? How's your stamina? I hear only a few laughs there, but people have come from around the world. Just call out to me where you're from. Can I hear a few cities? Where are you from? Texas? That's not a city. Give me a city. Dallas? Los Angeles? Vermont? Vermont? Do you know your geography? I'm looking for cities. Say? Montpelier. Say again? Sydney. Sydney. Hello, Australia. Yeah. Wonderful. Didn't get the city, but I'll practice. Say it again. Say the city again. Agendad. Okay, great. Any other cities? New York, London, Toronto, Melbourne, Dundee. Can't miss Dundee. Okay, so we've got a lot, and we've got lots online. We have a lot of people and a lot of sponsors that have made this possible. Just sit with me now while I really eloquently read to you all the sponsors. Sit back, pour yourself a cup of tea. It takes a village to make something like this happen. The Axon Johnson Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, the Future of Places, UN Habitat, the Bass Initiative on Innovation and Placemaking at Brookings, City of Vancouver, the SFU Center for Dialogue, the SFU Public Square, the Urban Development Institute of Vancouver, the Association of Neighborhood Houses of British Columbia, Southwest Airlines, Kaiser Permanente, Main Street America, the J.W. McConnell Family Foundation, Urbanscapes, the World Bank, Evergreen, the Real Estate Foundation of BC, and Community Foundations of Canada. Those are your sponsors. Thank you very much. A couple of logistics things. So when you walked in, there was a piece of paper under your butt. It's still there if you didn't pick it up. That's a map for you to go out and explore and get something to eat at lunchtime. You're on your own. Go have some fun. There's a lot of places. Go visit some of them and grab a bite to eat. The second thing is tonight, we're having a fabulous Power of 10 party, the Power of Place. Do you want to put that slide up? Which is a wonderful thing that's been completely self-organized through a whole lot of partners here in Vancouver. It's also the 10th anniversary of the Vancouver Public Space Committee, whole bunch of things. And in your packet, there was a little advertisement telling you to come to this, and you really need to come because you're going to get out and mingle with locals who are going to be out enjoying their city and realizing the power of what happens when you actually create some connection between these spaces, what PPS calls the Power of 10. So we hope you'll join us at that. It's tonight. Check your postcard. Don't forget. Now, this meeting is part of the Placemaking Leadership Forum, which is today and tomorrow, with a little bit of a teaser that happened yesterday. Today is the Future of Places Summit. And both of these events have a very important role internationally because it's part of the lead up to UN Habitat's Habitat 3, which is in a month, 3 weeks, in Quito, Ecuador. And Joan Clos, who leads Habitat 3, wanted to be here, but because he's 3 weeks out of 40,000 people coming to Ecuador, he couldn't, but he sent us a greeting. And Nate is going to push the button and play it. And then when he's done, the president of Project for Public Spaces will come up and start the program that's going to take place here, which is Fred Kent. So let's hear from Dr. Clos, and then Fred.
Thank you for inviting me to the Future of Places Summit in Vancouver. It's a pleasure to contribute to your conversation because, of course, we are in front of one of the most interesting challenges in the modern area. We have seen that from the beginning of the 21st century, urbanization has jumped the threshold of 50% of urbanization, and by now in 2016 we are already at something like 55, 56. That means that the process continues, and the predictions that around 2050 we can have something like between 65 or 70% of the world population urbanized. It seems that it's a right prediction. That, of course, it's a big opportunity, and also it represents a lot of difficult challenges. It's an opportunity because we know that related to urbanization, we have the chance of accelerating prosperity, accelerating well-being, accelerating, hopefully, equality and welfare, accelerating the provision and access to cultural goods, etc. There are many positive outcomes of urbanization, as we all know. But also the fact that urbanization is going so rapid, especially in developing countries where the institutional capacity to address the issues of urbanization is low, it can create a very disturbing pattern of concentration, immense concentration of new urban poverty, the risk of social conflict related to this poverty in the cities. In that sense, there's a huge responsibility here. That member states, states around the world that are pushing for rapid development and that are wanting the best for their people, they need to take care also, especially of the planning of urbanization. And in that planning of the urbanization, the provision of public goods, the public space in a special, because in these initial phases of development, public space is not perceived as a very important or relevant aspect of urbanization. It seems that there are more pressing needs, in terms of urbanization. But the problem of urbanization is that if you don't place the public space at the beginning, then to acquire the public space later on, it becomes very expensive. But not only very expensive, in many occasions it becomes a very high political conflict, and it becomes, in many cities, impossible. The new urban agenda associated to Habitat 3 I think it's a big opportunity to enhance the debate about this issue. Of course, urbanization is a national policy, something that is done by every member state, and the United Nations only provides guidelines. There's a consensus that urbanization is not regulated by international treaties or of forced enforcement. On the contrary, is a voluntary or a strictly national policy under the principles of subsidiarity. Then I think that our role is more in the side of advocacy, and that allows us to be very bold and to explain with clarity what are the risks of not having enough public space, not caring for the common goods of the city, in terms of delaying in a very big manner the capacity of urbanization to be a positive force for the society. I think that this is one of the main messages that we need seriously to transmit to the developing countries, in the sense that here there's a huge opportunity, but also if it's not addressed, immediately it becomes an immense risk and an immense drawback in the capacity of the nation or the country to develop adequately. There's no point of comparison in the effort needed to do, let's say, a little bit good urbanization. It has a cost, but it's a cost which is affordable, compared with the huge problems of not caring for this aspect. I think that this balance of cost-benefit between planned urbanization, structured urbanization, designed urbanization, and informal or spontaneous urbanization should clearly be explained in order to help the decision makers in many of these developing countries to take the adequate decisions in order to improve the urbanization. In the developed countries, it's not that we don't have problems. Again, we have problems also in the developed countries, and they are quite important. We are facing the issue of climate change, the emission of greenhouse gases, which are still growing at a pace that we need to not just stop, we need to decrease substantively in the forthcoming years, and that means that we need to change our model of urbanization in the developed world. And in that we need to do a mixed-use city, we need to do a walkable city, and at the end we are going to reclaim again more accessible public space nearby the places of everybody. Again here, another pending revolution that is needed also in the developed countries.
So everyone's over here. Hello. What a great opportunity, what a great day, what a great place, what a great group of people. As you know, this is not a conference, it's a campaign. And it's a campaign that we're going to win. It's really amazing what's happened since we started this 40 years ago, the idea of public spaces, Project for Public Spaces. No one was thinking about public space at that time. And then gradually it sort of moved beyond just that particular place, beyond the idea of the bench, the water, the tree, to much more about a feeling, much more about how we want to be in a place. And so then the word place came up, and then gradually the word placemaking became our mantra. And that mantra has really transformed us from just the idea of a public space to a whole idea of how you shape a city. Because at one point we came up with this phrase, the power of 10. Someone in Seattle asked us, well, how many places do I need in this museum, the Seattle Art Museum, in the building inside and out? And I didn't have the answer, so I said 10. And then she said, well, how many things do we need to do in each of those places? And I still didn't have the answer, so I said 10. So in a way, that was the beginning of a really big idea. How many places on a street? How many? Do you have 10? Do you have 3? Do you have 2? How many can you get to 10? How many places in a neighborhood? How many places in a city? How many places in a region? And you start scaling it up and down. And when you look at what you have, or really what you don't have, you then begin to realize, wow, we are really deficient. We really don't have the kind of nurturing places that we want. So that has been kind of the evolution of the organization. And then we started doing something called the Placemaking Leadership Council, and then the Brain Trust, and all of a sudden, 1,300 people from around the world have signed up for that, from 500 cities. So I'm going to show some of that in a presentation I'll give in a few minutes. But I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. I only have 3 things to talk about. So then, one of the things that happened is that this man from Sweden was sitting in the front row of a training program that we have, and he never left the front row. And sort of the second day, he sort of said, well, we should get together. So we had dinner. He came over to our house, and then on Saturday morning, I called one of the people from UN Habitat, and Cecilia Martinez, who was the U.S. person, the UN Habitat person in the United Nations, and we had lunch in this wonderful Union Square Cafe, which I hadn't really had the opportunity to go to. It's all local, natural food, and at that lunch, we had enough wine for Peter to go back Sunday, and with his foundation that he works with, the Axon Johnson Foundation, we set up this program called The Future of Places. And he called Monday afternoon and said that was what he was going to do. So that started a 3-year program where we've been in Buenos Aires and Stockholm, and we've had 1,500 people come to those meetings to shape the idea of public space and placemaking. And some of you are probably there. So Peter has become not only a partner, but also part of a global change movement that we're going to continue with all of you as we begin to shape what really has become a platform. We kind of stumbled into this, and the more we stumble along, doing this and that, and someone coming to us, next week the Clinton Global Initiative came to us and said, we want you to be part of this, and we have some wonderful people from the World Bank, and they're looking seriously at this. So it's really kind of morphing into something much bigger. And so this platform that we're all part of is something we all need to share. And when we go back to our cities, this is what we're going to take back, is much more passion, enthusiasm, understanding, and capacity to create the changes that we all want. So Peter, a great friend, you're going to say something about the future of places and your passion too. We've all become passionate about a lot of different things.
Thanks. Good morning and welcome to the Future of Places Summit. We have to call it something, so again, Summit, which was a collaboration between PPS, UN Habitat, and the Axon Johnson Foundation in order to promote the value of public space in the new urban agenda that will be signed next month in Quito. And we have been successful because we have 8 paragraphs in that policy document that refers to the value of public space from different perspectives. The Future of Places project will now end up as an international research network with the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm as a central hub. Michael Mahaffey will expand on that. I will use the rest of my speaker time, my short speaker time, to set the stage for struggles to come. And I would start with the magazine The Economist, because they had an article in the September issue about cities and the economy, which was both right and wrong. In the first sentence, in the first paragraph, they were correctly saying that 50 years ago, American companies started to move their headquarters away from the city centers to the suburbs. I think that's a correct description. But in the next paragraph, they're opening with, now, a growing number of companies are moving back again. But dear economists, that process started 30 years ago. This is nothing that is happening just now. It has been happening for a long time. And I'm thinking if normally well-informed journalists doesn't seem to have the whole picture of the current urbanization process, maybe there are a few others who needs to be reminded at least of what has happened. And the most forgotten part of our history is usually the one that just has been. So let me remind you. Let's go back to the 60s. Why did we move back from the suburbs? Was it only about new lifestyles, or was it something else? I would like to say that the most plausible explanation is the economic transformation that we have seen during the 20th century. This is a diagram of how your workforce had been distributed in America, the 20th century. And as you see, the number of agricultural workers is going down, the number of industrial workers is going up to the heydays, where in the 50s and the 60s, where large-scale production companies dominated the economy. But after the 1970s, we have had a huge increase of the service sector. And that is the main driving force behind the urbanization process in the West. So, in the beginning, in the starting point in the 60s, the big companies were self-contained, and you had a headquarters close to the production site. But with new information technology, it was suddenly possible to separate the production from the headquarters. So the factories went to small cities or stay there or abroad, looking for cheaper labor, and the headquarters were moving into the city, looking for more expensive labor. And while they are in the cities, they started to decrease in size. They had a downsizing, because now they could buy advanced services from specialists within finance, IT, marketing, etc., etc. And so the B2B sector in our economy started to grow in our cities. And specialized firms also buying services from other specialized firms. And we have strong agglomeration advantages in this part of the economy. So cities became more and more attractive. And in 1993, a highly specialized academic magazine wrote that about the new urban revival in the United States. In 96, you have this huge debate about the downsizing of America. And suddenly, more people are pouring into cities because now they are more attractive, we have more services there, more restaurants, etc., etc. More middle class are moving in, and we have a huge, brutal gentrification in our cities. And above that, we have the globalization, which also increased the importance, the economic importance of our cities, because when you export things, you need to have local knowledge. So you need to have more headquarters in cities, buying local knowledge, etc., etc. So, at the same time, statistics started to come up from the United Nations about soon will the world population, half of it will live in the cities. And 10 years later, it was a fact. But statistics doesn't always give us the whole story. The truth of the statistics is that the West is already urbanized since a long time ago. The urbanization we see now is going on in the South, global South, Africa and Asia, where 90% of the coming urbanization will happen up to 2050. The West is already urbanized. About 78% of the population in developed countries are living in cities. So what's going on in Asia and Africa is an urbanization process that is very different from our process. And what is a city in statistics? Is it an administrative area or is it an urban form? This is Paris. The Paris you love, the streets and the boulevards, the parks and the buildings, That is Paris. This is the municipality of Paris. And the statistics is based on the municipality level. So it doesn't say so much about urban form. And if you look at statistics from Eurostat, who is delivering statistics to UN, these nice cities, like Kristianstad and Karlskrona, historic cities in Sweden, the one to the right was the third largest city for a few hundred years ago. They are categorized in Eurostat statistics as rural areas. So if you think the life here in the city is stressful, you can go to Karlskrona and enjoy the silence, yes? New towns in Sweden, like Gällivare and Kiruna, which are modernist new towns, they are categorized as small towns in the statistics. Right. So how many Swedes live in a true city then? And with a true city, I mean the interconnected street grid, public places, and mixed use and all that. And how many of them are living in dense agglomerations outside the core? Well, about 5% of the Swedish population are living in a true city. But many, many more wants to live there, and many more firms want to be there, but they are becoming more and more expensive, and for some reason we cannot build more of this for the moment. So now the city is a strategic resource for the economic world. Here you have the specialists, the talents, the innovators, and the city is now a place for corporate identity. So the urbanization of the economy has been a good thing for cities for a long time, but now we're reaching a tipping point. And if we continue with this economic logic that we have for the moment, we will end up destroying the very places that we love. And you are destroying the diversity, and with that also the proximity to things. So we need to be able to build more attractive places to do something about this. So the corporate city logic is about large-scale exploitment of good public space, brutal segregation, global real estate speculation. Who is owning Vancouver, by the way? And corporate design dominates the architecture, and it's spreading to other sectors. This is the Disney Music Hall in LA. I show it because it's extremely aggressive to the pedestrians here. You know this in Bilbao. And this is a planned project in the heart of historical Stockholm. In an extremely beautiful setting, the Nobel Foundation wants to put down this nuclear power station. And it's a big opinion against this building now. There will be a big demonstration in Stockholm 2 days from now against it. Apple wants to build this concept store in Kungsträdgården, one of our most important public spaces, now about to be privatized. Well, the city is also a place to live in. And when you think of a city from that perspective, you want to have other things than the corporate city wants. You want to have human scale, variation, diversified public spaces, and fine-grained mix of function and all that. And in order to understand a civilized city, you need another set of knowledges than the real estate world needs. You need to understand psychology, social psychology, environmental psychology, etc., in order to build new ones. So I see a struggle between two cities today, the corporate city and the civilized city. Who supports the corporate city then? Well, the market, the building industry, the politicians, the environmentalists, for some reason, supports this because they believe that skyscrapers is the solution to preserve land, which is a misconception. And journalists, they like news, yeah? But who supports the civilized city? Well, Axon Johnson Foundation. And PPS, Prince Charles, Congress for New Urbanism, UN Habitat, and a growing opinion. I'm joking a little bit, but what's interesting here is that we don't have any political support for this perspective of the civilized city. Therefore, this new urban agenda, therefore it is so important, because suddenly we have a way to reach higher political levels. So please, use that agenda, refer to it, refer to the paragraphs of the importance of public places and spaces. Thank you very much.